10 years ago, you made a video that was titled Why Humans Run the World. It's a very well-known TED Talk that you did. After reading your new book, Nexus, I wanted to ask you a slightly modified question, which is, do you still believe that 10 years from now, humans will fundamentally be running the world?
I'm not sure. It depends on the decisions we all take in the coming years, but there is a chance that the answer is no. That in 10 years, algorithms and AIs will be running the world. I'm not having in mind some kind of Hollywoodian science fiction scenario of one big computer kind of conquering the world. It's more like a bureaucracy of AIs, that we will have millions of AI bureaucrats everywhere, in the banks, in the government, in businesses, in universities, making more and more decisions about our lives. That everyday decisions, whether to give us a loan, whether to accept us to a job, and we will find it more and more difficult to understand the logic, the rationale, why the algorithm refused to give us a loan, why the algorithm accepted somebody else for the job. And, you still have democracies with people voting for this president or this prime minister. But if most of the decisions are made by AIs and humans, including the politicians, have difficulty understanding the reason why the AIs are making a particular decision, then power will gradually shift from humanity to these new alien intelligences.
Alien intelligences?
Yeah, I prefer to think about AI. I know that the acronym is artificial intelligence, but I think it's more accurate to think about it as an alien intelligence, not in the sense of coming from outer space, in the sense that it makes decision in a fundamentally different way than human minds. Artificial means or have the sense that we design it, we control it. Something artificial is made by humans. With each passing year, AI is becoming less and less artificial and more alien. Yes, we still design the kind of baby AIs, but then they learn and they change and they start making unexpected decisions and they start coming up with new ideas, which are again alien to the human way of doing things. There is this famous example with the game of Go, that in 2016, AlphaGo defeated the world champion, Lee Sedol. But the amazing thing about it was the way it did it. Because humans have been playing Go for 2,500 years.
A board game,
a strategy game developed in ancient China and considered one of the basic arts that any cultivated, civilized person in East Asia had to know. And tens of millions of Chinese and Koreans and Japanese played Go for centuries. Entire philosophies developed around the game of how to play it. It was considered a good preparation for politics and for life. And people thought that they explored the entire realm, the entire geography landscape of Go. And then AlphaGo came along and showed us that actually for 2,500 years, people were exploring just a very small bit, a very small part of the landscape of Go. There are completely different strategies of how to play the game that not a single human being came up with in more than 2,000 years of playing it. And AlphaGo came up with it in just a few days. So this is alien intelligence. And, if it's just a game, but the same thing is likely to happen in finance, in medicine, in religion, for better or for worse.
You wrote this book, Nexus. How do you pronounce it?
Nexus.
Nexus.
I'm not an expert on pronunciation. So.
You could have written many a book. You're someone that's, I think, broadly curious about the nature of life, but also the nature of history. For you to write a book that is so detailed and comprehensive, there must have been a pretty strong reason why this book had to come from you now. And why is that?
Because I think we need a historical perspective on the AI revolution. I mean, there are many books about AI. Nexus is not a book about AI. It's a book about the long-term history of information networks I think that to understand what is really new and important about AI, we need perspective of thousands of years to go back and look at previous information revolutions, like the invention of writing and the printing press and the radio. And only then you really start to understand what is happening around us right now. One thing you understand, for instance, is that AI is really different. People compare it to previous revolutions, but it's different because it's the first technology ever in human history that is able to make decisions independently and to create new ideas independently. A printing press could print my book, but it could not write it. It could just copy my ideas. An atom bomb could destroy a city, but it can't decide by itself which city to bomb or why to bomb it. And AI can do that. And there is a lot of hype right now around AI, so people get confused because they now try to sell us everything as AI. Like, you want to sell this table to somebody, oh, it's an AI table, and this water, this is AI water. So people, what is AI? Everything is AI. No, not everything. There is a lot of automation out there, which is not AI. If you think about a coffee machine that makes coffee for you, it does things automatically, but it's not an AI. It's pre-programmed by humans to do certain things, and it can never learn or change by itself. A coffee machine becomes an AI if you come to the coffee machine in the morning and the machine tells you, hey, based on what I know about you, I guess that you would like an espresso. It learned something about you, and it makes an independent decision. It doesn't wait for you to ask for the espresso. And it's really AI if it tells you, and I just came up with a new drink, it's called Boffy, and I think you would like it. That's really AI. When it comes up with completely new ideas that we did not program into it and that we did not anticipate. And this is a game changer in history. It's bigger than the printing press. It's bigger than the atom bomb.
You said we need to have a historical perspective. And do you consider yourself to be a historian?
Yes, that's my profession is a historian. That's kind of, this is my training. I was originally a specialist in medieval military history. I wrote about the Crusades and the 100 Years' War and the strategy and logistics of the English armies that invaded France in the 14th century. This was my first articles. And this is the kind of perspective or of knowledge that I also bring to try and understand what's happening now with AI.
Because most people's understanding of what AI is comes from them playing around with a large language model like ChatGPT or Gemini or Grok or something. That's like their understanding of it. You can ask it a question and it gives you an answer. That's really what people think of AI as. And so it's easy to be a bit complacent with it, or to see this technological shift as being trivial. But when you start talking about information and the disruption of the flow of information and information networks, and when you bring it back through history and you give us this perspective on the fact that information effectively glues us all together, then it starts to become, for me, I think about it completely differently.
I mean, there are two ways I think about it. I mean, one way is that when you realize that, as you said, that information is the basis for everything, when you start to shake the basis, everything can collapse or change, or something new could come up. For instance, democracies are made possible only by information technology. Democracy, in essence, is a conversation. A group of people conversing, talking, trying to make decisions together. Dictatorship is somebody dictates everything. One person dictates everything, that's dictatorship. Democracy is a conversation. Now, in the Stone Age, hunter-gatherers living in small bands, they were mostly democratic. Whenever the band needed to decide anything, they could just talk with each other and decide. As human societies grew bigger, it just became technically difficult to hold the conversation. So the only examples we have from the ancient world for democracies are small city-states, like Athens or Republican Rome. These are the two most famous examples, not the only ones, but the most famous. And even the ancients, even philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, they knew Once you go beyond the level of a city-state, democracy is impossible. We do not know of a single example from the pre-modern world of a large-scale democracy. Millions of people spread over a large territory, conducting their political affairs democratically. Why? Not because of this or that dictator that took power, because democracy was simply impossible. You cannot have a conversation between millions of people when you don't have the right technology. Large-scale democracy becomes possible only in the late modern era, when a couple of information technologies appear, first the newspaper, then telegraph and radio and television, and they make large-scale democracy possible. So democracy, it's not like you have democracy and on the side you have these information technologies. No, the basis of democracy is information technology. So if you have some kind of earthquake in the information technology, like the rise of social media or the rise of AI, this is bound to shake democracy, which is now what we see around the world is that we have the most sophisticated information technology in history, and people can't talk with each other. The democratic conversation is breaking down. And every country has its own explanation. Like you talk to Americans, what's happening there between Democrats and Republicans? Why can't they agree on even the most basic facts? And they give you all these explanations about the unique conditions of American history and society. But you see the same thing in Brazil. You see the same thing in France, in the Philippines. So it can't be the unique conditions of this or that country. It's the underlying technological revolution. And the other thing that history kind of that I bring from history is how even relatively small technological changes, or seemingly small changes, can have far-reaching consequences. Like you think about the invention of writing, originally it was basically people playing with mud. I mean, writing was invented it was invented many times in many places, but the first time in ancient Mesopotamia, people take clay tablets, which is basically pieces of mud, and they take a stick and they use the stick to make marks in the mud. And this is the invention of writing. And this had a profound effect. To give just one example, you think about ownership. What does it mean to own something? Like I own a house, I own a field. So previously, before writing, to own a field, if you live in a small Mesopotamian village, like 7,000 years ago, you own a field, this is a community affair. It means that your neighbors agree that this field is yours and they don't pick fruits there and they don't graze their sheep there because they agree it's yours. It's a community agreement. Then comes writing, and you have written documents, and ownership changes its meaning. Now, to own a field or a house means that there is some piece of dry mud somewhere in the archive of the king with marks on it that says that you own that field. So suddenly, ownership is not a matter of community agreement between the neighbors. It's a matter of which document sits in the archive of the king. And it also means, for instance, that you can sell your land to a stranger